He had chased her for 5 years, but it all came to nothing. 5 years later, he saw her again, standing among a crowd of girls in short skirts at a KTV lounge. He was already drunk, thick-skinned and reckless. He grabbed her hand. "Isabella, will you kiss me?" She obeyed without a word. But as she leaned in to kiss him, there was a dull gray in the depths of her eyes that he couldn't read. That night was his best friend's birthday. All the guys were completely wasted. They unanimously decided to call in a few models to drink with them. And there, among those models, he spotted her. The goddess he had pursued for 5 whole years without success. 2 years apart. And she hadn't changed much. Her features were still breathtaking. Her eyes still crystal clear. She always loved wearing white dresses best. Her gaze carried the same proud indifference. Standing in the crowd, she looked untouched by the dust and smoke of the mortal world. There were 5 guys in total, including him. 3 of them, without consulting each other, all picked Isabella. He quickly stepped in to stop them. "Brothers, let me have this one." Drunk and rowdy, they protested loudly. He only said one sentence, and they all fell silent. "She's Isabella." They froze in unison, looking at each other, dumbfounded. He had told them the story of him and Isabella more than once. After that, he got his wish and led Isabella back to the sofa to sit with him. His brothers were true bros. Without a word, they all gave up the darkest, most secluded corner. For the 2 of them, he sat beside her. His chest felt tight, his breathing difficult. He sat up straight and proper. He was clearly the one paying. Yet he didn't dare say a single word. After a long while, he finally asked softly, "Have you been doing okay these past 2 years?" She answered just as softly. Her voice slipped through the music and into his ears. A simple "M" served as her reply. Then came a long, heavy silence. Until his friends decided he was being too timid, and ordered several more crates of liquor. Isabella said nothing. She just quietly sat beside him, drinking along. But after a few bottles, the alcohol slowly numbed his nerves. After chugging an entire bottle of beer in one go, he slammed the empty bottle onto the coffee table, turned to look at Isabella. Her slender, pale fingers were wrapped around a glass. Even her hand was more beautiful than most people's. He stared at her in silence for a long time. Emboldened by the liquor, he pulled out his wallet, took out a thick wad of cash and stuffed it into her hand without a word. Then, he looked at the girl he had treated as a goddess for so many years. "Isabella, will you kiss me?" Isabella looked at him then suddenly smiled. He had chased her for years, yet he rarely ever saw her smile. When she did, the corners of her eyes curved gently. Broken starlight seemed to shimmer in their depths. The next second, she smiled faintly and glanced at the stack of money. "Kiss you a few more times, then. Otherwise I won't feel easy holding all this money." He was still dazed from that smile. Frowning under the influence, he muttered, "Don't just talk. Go on, try." But before he could finish, Isabella really leaned in and kissed him. His mind went blank. The warm, soft sensation on his lips, something he had never dared dream of all these years. Isabella had truly kissed him. His thoughts turned to snow. He wanted to pull her into his arms. His hands rose in mid-air, yet he couldn't bring himself to lower them. After a long, long moment, that kiss, not particularly passionate, finally ended. The girl he had once seen as a goddess now quietly watched him, her gaze calm and still. In her hand, she still held the stack of money he had just given her. That stack of bills. In an instant, it seemed to drag her down from the heavens, staining her with the smoke and fire of the mortal world. Of course he wouldn't despise her for it. On the contrary, both his hands, hidden in his sleeves, were trembling faintly. "If she's really staying with me just for the money, how wonderful that would be." Maybe his luck wasn't so bad after all. After opening the coffee shop, contrary to his family's predictions, that he'd lose everything, it suddenly blew up online. Every day, crowds poured in to check in and take photos. Money, he had. But Isabella was someone you could meet yet never truly have. He stared at her for a long time, then turned, grabbed the bottle beside him, downed more than half in loud gulps. With a clack, he set it on the table, took a deep breath, turned to her again. "Isabella." She answered Her voice was soft, like the lightest feather brushing his ear, both soothing and teasing. "Well." He licked his lips. Gathering all his courage, he asked, "Will you come home with me?" Isabella clearly froze. She lowered her eyes, refusing to look at him. Those deep, beautiful eyes. The emotions hidden inside. He was too drunk to read a single one. Still, his alcohol-numbed brain slowly began to react. He hurriedly changed his tone to explain. I mean, are you in some kind of trouble right now? I can help you. Really? Isabella looked at him quietly for a very long time. Truly a very long time. Just when he couldn't hold back and was about to retreat, Isabella softly spoke, I need a lot. That's fine. He quickly grabbed her hand, emphasizing again, I can help you. Really? The sorrow of loving her yet never having her all those years exploded in this moment, fueled by the alcohol. He gripped her hand tightly, staring into her eyes. Isabella, please don't go drink with other men anymore, okay? He couldn't bear to imagine it. Isabella, who always loved white dresses, sitting beside another man for money, or even the way she might look in someone else's bed. He didn't know if his sudden outburst had affected her. But Isabella, who had been distant and cool, her expression gradually grew heavy. She looked at him silently, her gaze unreadable. Just when he was anxiously about to ask for her WeChat to transfer money, Isabella pressed his hand down. Her palm was warm. In those few short seconds of contact, that warmth slowly spread through him. No need to transfer anything yet. She glanced at the money still in her hand. Let's settle day by day. This amount happens to cover exactly 1 day. He was stunned. Isabella had said she was expensive, but he hadn't expected her to be this expensive. The stack he had given her was at least 10,000 yuan, yet it only bought 1 day. Still, he gritted his teeth and agreed. That night, he took Isabella home. He was drunk. She was not. His head spun, his courage swelled. Drunk and bold, he stripped her bare in the bedroom. Truth be told, Isabella's first reaction was to refuse. But he cupped her face in both hands, looked at her with deadly seriousness. His drunken eyes finally focused on Isabella. Slurring, he told her, I already paid, okay. Are you ready to let me have you? Isabella froze for 2 seconds, then suddenly laughed. Mum. And after that, she truly stopped resisting. But he was far too drunk. Just as he started undressing himself, a sudden tightness gripped his chest. He couldn't hold it in and vomited right beside the bed. After that, he remembered nothing more. Anyway, when he woke the next day, Isabella was lying in his arms. Isabella was wearing his shirt, curled up against him, more than half the alcohol worn off. He felt a twinge of regret. Softly asked her, what happened last night? Isabella smiled. She raised a brow. Those eyes were so beautiful they stole his breath. I guess. He lifted the blanket for a quick look. Damn it, he really had drunk too much last night. Seeing the red stain on the sheets, he fell silent for a long time. He pressed his lips together and whispered, well, I'll take responsibility for you. With that, he scrambled to find his phone, wanting to transfer money to her right then and there. But the phone had died overnight. He held the dead phone and gave an awkward laugh. I'll pay for today in a bit. Isabella paused, then lowered her eyes and softly said, After that, they quietly got out of bed and dressed. Neither said a word, though while Isabella was getting dressed, he stole a glance at her. A girl this beautiful, and he had zero memory of last night. Blackout drunk. What a waste. When Isabella turned around, he hurriedly looked away. Panicking, he stared elsewhere. She slipped off the shirt and wrapped a towel around herself. When she turned back and saw him, she frowned slightly. My dress isn't dry yet. He glanced at the dress hanging on the balcony. You washed it last night? Isabella's voice was low. You threw up all over me. His face went pale. Thinking back, yeah, he really had. After a moment of awkward silence, he suddenly remembered. He still had one of his sister's dresses here. Brand new. He quickly rummaged through the closet and handed it to Isabella. She didn't take it immediately, lowered her eyes and looked at it twice. Isabella. She lifted her gaze. You have women's dresses at home? Her voice was soft, no accusation in it, just a casual remark. Then she took the dress. For some reason, he hurriedly explained. It's my sister's. She came over last time and bought it on the way. Forgot to take it when she left. Isabella showed no particular reaction. She simply took the dress and went into the bathroom. He had just finished dressing when Isabella's voice came from the bathroom. Any spare toothbrushes? He quickly answered yes. Rushed in, found one and handed it to her. He carefully held his own toothbrush, standing beside her, brushing teeth together. In the mirror, he wore a white shirt, perfectly matching Isabella's white dress. They stood shoulder to shoulder. She only came up to his chin, but after brushing, Isabella's toothpaste foam was full of blood. His heart pounded with fear. Isabella. Isabella calmly rinsed her mouth, washed away the blood at the corner of her lips. Her expression serene. It's nothing. My gums have been inflamed lately. He could only nod. But suspicion began to grow inside him. Isabella working as a model in a KTV. Was it like on TV? Some terminal illness? But Isabella looked perfectly calm. Didn't seem like it. After washing up, they sat side by side on the edge of the bed. Another long silence. She turned to him, softly asked, "Can I still go to work?" "Work?" He was startled, tentatively asked back, "You mean at the KTV?" "Yes." Seeing he was speechless, Isabella nodded, cutting him off. "No." He rejected the idea without thinking, quickly pulled out his charging phone, turned it on, added Isabella on WeChat, transferred 10,000 yuan, sent it. "Don't go drinking with other men anymore." After a pause, he softened his voice and added, "Okay?" Isabella looked at him for a long time, then lowered her eyes. "Okay." At breakfast, he couldn't help asking softly, "Isabella, why don't you find another job?" Someone as proud as her, how could she bear to sell her smiles for money? After he said that, the hand holding her spoon froze. Finally, she calmly replied, "I really need money." As for why, she didn't say, and he didn't dare ask. After breakfast, he had to go to the coffee shop, but Isabella followed him anyway. He asked why. She calmly told him he had paid to keep her. Her time belonged entirely to him now. Of course, he happily agreed. Inside the coffee shop, Isabella in her pure white dress, standing with him behind the bar, instantly drew every customer's gaze. Her beauty was clean, her dark eyes pure and bright. She didn't even need to do anything. Just standing there quietly was enough to capture everyone's attention. Some people are born to shine. From the moment he met Isabella in his teenage years, no one else had ever made his heart race again. During slow moments at work, he would rest his chin on his hand and secretly watch her. Everything felt like it had gone back to the beginning. Speaking of which, he and Isabella had known each other for many years. They were high school classmates, then ended up at the same university in the city. Only halfway through sophomore year, Isabella dropped out. After that, none of us ever heard from her again. Not a single person. Back in school, Isabella was always the most dazzling person in any crowd, but people like that are always envied. In high school, there were tons of rumors about Isabella circulating around campus, and they were ugly ones. Her parents had died in an accident when she was in middle school. Then in senior year, a rumor suddenly spread everywhere. Everyone said Isabella was being kept by an older man with special tastes. A man more than 10 years her senior. All kinds of rumors flew around, and Isabella never explained. So gradually everyone treated it as silently admitted. Truth be told, plenty of boys liked Isabella, but because of those rumors, everyone avoided her like the plague. Only he, stubborn as a mule, ignored all the gossip and chased her for 5 whole years. From sophomore year of high school to the end of sophomore year in college, he only remembered when he publicly confessed to her. The very first thing she said to him was, "Those rumors. Aren't you afraid?" Time has passed so long, he no longer remembered many details. But even today, he still clearly remembered how seriously and firmly he had looked at her then. Afraid of what? When you like someone, you're never afraid. The him back then really was fearless. Not like now, needing liquid courage just to keep her. Business was strangely good today. Of course, most of the customers were men. Good for business, sure, but he wasn't exactly happy. It felt like his treasure was being ogled by other guys. So he closed up early today, took Isabella home. After all, some things are more important than making money, right? But Isabella obediently came home with Haim. Yet he chickened out again. She had already followed him into the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed, quietly watching him. Those clear eyes instantly filled him with guilt, as if all his dirty thoughts were tainting her. He really couldn't bring himself to touch her. After thinking it over, he decided to buy more alcohol to drink. Isabella was very obedient. She set the newly bought liquor on the bedroom floor mat, then turned and headed to the kitchen. He was confused. "What are you doing?" "Cooking." She tied on an apron, picked up the groceries they had grabbed on the way. When they bought the alcohol downstairs, she walked into the kitchen. "Drinking on an empty stomach is bad for you." Then, she added gently, "Remember to eat on time from now on." Those words melted his heart. He quickly followed her into the kitchen, Sidling up close, he softly asked, "So, are you worried about me?" Isabella smiled. Her eyes softened with that smile. "You can think of it that way." He smiled too. Then he would take it as her caring for him. Isabella was an amazing cook. He sat on the sofa watching TV. All he heard were the sounds of cooking in the kitchen. Soon she brought out dinner. 2 meat dishes, 1 soup, braised eggplant, garlic stir-fried greens, tomato egg drop soup, simple home-cooked meals. Yet he couldn't stop eating. His goddess really could do everything. Beautiful. Top grades back in school. And now she cooked like this, full and a little tipsy. Only then did he remember the untouched liquor in the bedroom. He hesitated. Never mind. Forget it. One more drink and he'd probably throw up again. After dinner, Isabella wouldn't let him into the kitchen. She washed the dishes herself, then curled up with him on the sofa to binge a show. But how could he focus on the TV? Right beside him sat the girl he had loved for years. He could hear her breathing, feel her body heat. Even just lifting his eyes, he could see the gentle curve of her profile. Everything about her made it impossible for him to stay calm. Halfway through the show, a passionate kissing scene suddenly appeared on screen. He instantly lost all composure. Watching the leads kiss with abandon, he suddenly got bold, turned to her and tested the waters. "Kiss me." Isabella paused, then smiled. She said, "Sure." And then her kiss gently landed. Isabella kissed so tenderly, her lips softly pressed against his. Slow and lingering, the kiss gradually deepened. She closed her eyes. Her hand quietly gripped his collar. Isabella took his hand, then quietly let it go again. He felt nervous. He had thought tonight everything would naturally progress. But Isabella gently pushed him away. On the bed, Isabella suddenly hugged him. "Sleep," she whispered in his ear, her voice a little husky. He didn't know the flash of heartache in her eyes, why it was there, nor whether she had ever truly felt anything for him. But since she refused, of course, he wouldn't force her. Truth be told, just holding her like this, being able to lean in and softly kiss her lips, was already more than he had ever dared dream of. He gently wrapped his arms around her waist. "Good night, Isabella." As if something was slowly filling him up, filling the heart that had been empty for so long. The bright, quiet room still carried the faint smell of dinner. Holding Isabella in his arms, her steady breathing by his ear. "These days, please let me have a few hundred more years of them." He thought Isabella wouldn't respond, but a few seconds later, her voice still sounded by his ear. "Good night, Ethan." Hearing his name from her lips, it carried a feeling that could easily move anyone. He remembered their first meeting in sophomore year of high school. She had once asked his name, then smiled softly. "Sounds nice." It was probably that very first smile that completely undid him. Lost in thought, he heard Isabella softly ask, "What are you thinking about?" He looked up and met her eyes. She was smiling gently. In those pure, dark eyes, there were too many emotions he couldn't read. He looked at her and smiled. "I'm thinking that saying is really true. You really shouldn't meet someone too stunning when you're young. Otherwise the rest of your life will never know peace." Isabella said nothing. Only after a long silence, she gently tightened her grip on his hand. And so he and Isabella began a nameless, undefined life together. His apartment was right here in the city. His parents were always busy with work. They never came by. He never introduced Isabella to his friends. 1. Because he wasn't actually her boyfriend. He had no title to introduce her with. 2. Because deep down he was selfish. Isabella was too perfect for him. He always wanted to hide her away, keep her from anyone else's eyes. So he hid her from everyone, paying the sky-high price of $10,000 a day to keep Isabella, calling it keeping her. But really, they weren't any different from normal couples. Only, he was running out of money to keep her. $10,000 a day. The savings he had would last maybe another 10+ days at most. As it turned out, fate works in mysterious ways. Maybe heaven had plans after all. On the 10th night of keeping Isabella, she suddenly received a phone call. Around 2:10 a.m., her phone rang loudly. Her phone was never on silent, 24 hours a day, as if afraid of missing something important. The moment it rang, she, who was always calm, bolted upright, grabbed the phone beside her pillow. A voice came through the line. He only caught the last sentence clearly. "The situation is very bad. Come quickly." After hanging up, Isabella didn't say a word to him. She jumped out of bed and started dressing. He had never seen her face so grave. He couldn't help asking what was wrong. But she didn't answer. He wasn't even sure if she had heard him at all. Seeing her like that, he grew worried. He started getting dressed too. But Isabella dressed fast. Once clothed, she walked straight out of the room. Isabella. He hurriedly called after her, grabbing a jacket and chasing her. At the door, Isabella was about to leave. But she stopped, turned back to look at him once. In her rush, he had one foot in a slipper, the other bare on the cold floor. Isabella said in a low voice, "I have an emergency, go back to sleep. Don't wait up tonight." He quickly followed. "I'm worried about you. Let me come with you." Isabella looked at him twice, her voice a little hoarse. "Put shoes on. It's cold at night." He hurriedly slipped on shoes, followed Isabella out. They hailed a taxi. She kept urging the driver, so he drove fast. Few cars on the road in the early hours. Soon they arrived, the city hospital, the best oncology hospital in the area. He suddenly had a guess. But Isabella had no parents. He didn't know who could make her this anxious, willing to work as a model just to pay medical bills. Getting out of the taxi, Isabella practically ran into the hospital. He jogged behind her. In front of the emergency room, Isabella stared at the lit sign, her hands clenched tight. For some reason, her eyes looking inside seemed full of hope. He stood behind her, watching. He didn't know what she had been through, nor what kind of experiences had slowly shaped the Isabella of today. The whole time, they didn't exchange a single word. Truth be told, he had wanted to ask who was inside, but he hesitated and ultimately didn't disturb her. He didn't know how much time passed. The operating room light finally went out. A doctor emerged. Isabella practically rushed forward, but the doctor still gave her the answer she least wanted. "I'm sorry, we did everything we could. The patient is still conscious for now. If there's anything left to say it soon." Isabella stood frozen in place, only giving him her back. Clearly she hadn't moved, yet her straight spine seemed to crumple in an instant. Soon the medical staff wheeled someone out, into a regular ward, a middle-aged man. Isabella quickly followed. They passed right by him. He pressed his lips together, took a careful look at the man on the bed. That middle-aged man, he had seen him before. Back then, when rumors flew around school, they all said Isabella was kept by a rich older man more than 10 years her senior. The rumors came with proof, as if they were real. And that year he had seen the circulated photo, because it involved Isabella. He remembered it crystal clear, though the man on the stretcher just now was ravaged by illness. His face pale, he recognized him at a glance. It was him, the man from the rumors. The older lover more than 10 years her senior. It was him. He couldn't describe the feeling in that moment, as if he had uncovered some truth. But a truth he found hard to accept. So everything Isabella had done, even lowering herself to work as a model, was all for this unrelated middle-aged man, more than 10 years older than her? He couldn't help overthinking. So, the 10,000 a day he paid was also going toward this man's treatment. In that moment his heart ached unbearably. Words failed him. The ward door. Because she was in a hurry, Isabella hadn't closed it. He stood not far from the room, able to see inside. Isabella knelt on one knee beside the bed, holding the man's hand tightly. Isabella, who even if the sky fell, would keep her back straight, was now bent over, trembling faintly. He couldn't see Isabella's expression, but he could see the man's face. The man looked at Isabella and seemed to say something softly. Isabella gripped his hand tighter, her shoulders slumped. Suddenly, the man slowly turned his head and looked at him. He froze, unsure how to react, just stared blankly back, until the man gave him a faint smile and turned away. Isabella followed the man's movement and looked toward him. Her eyes were red. That middle-aged man truly seemed to be at the end of his life. He struggled to say a few more words to Isabella, growing ever weaker, until Isabella gently leaned down to hug him. When she straightened up, the man no longer moved. Isabella knelt by the bed for a very long time. Then she stood, neatly adjusted his clothes and blanket, calmly walked out to call the nurse. From beginning to end, she never said a word to him. He started to feel afraid. The person she cared about was gone. She no longer needed to scramble for medical bills. Would she leave him too? He didn't dare think about it. Maybe the grief was too much. After the man passed, Isabella instead appeared terrifyingly calm to the point of frightening. He almost wished she would collapse and cry. That would be the normal reaction to heartbreak, but Isabella didn't. She calmly called the nurse, calmly watched the hospital staff wheel the man to the morgue, then calmly went home with him to sleep. By the time they got home, dawn was breaking. They lay in bed, each lost in their own thoughts, silent. He couldn't hold it in. Turned to her and softly asked, "So the rumors were true after all?" He really couldn't keep it inside anymore. The way that man had looked at him still haunted him. He couldn't describe it, but he couldn't forget it either. But he never expected Isabella's reaction to be so strong. She sat bolt upright, lowered her eyes and stared at him. "Ethan, I never want to hear those words again." He had never seen Isabella so cold. For a moment he was stunned. After a long while, Isabella seemed to calm down. She curled into his arms, her voice much softer. "Ethan, other people can doubt me, can slander me, but you have to trust me." He nodded in a daze. But she only told him to trust her, never mentioned a word about her past, not even a single explanation. Yet it must be said, Isabella really understood him. She must have known that he was the one person in this world who would trust her unconditionally, no matter what. The next day Isabella held a funeral for the man. She had already bought the grave plot long ago, and he learned the man's name from the tombstone. Henry. This middle-aged man seemed to have no close friends or relatives. The funeral was extremely simple, only Isabella mourning him, seeing him off on his final journey. Of course, he was there too, throughout the entire funeral. He and Isabella didn't exchange a single word. They calmly and silently sent off this middle-aged man. After the funeral, he and Isabella left, walking down the road, still silent. And that silence terrified him. No more worries, no more ties. Would she leave him? He didn't dare ask, afraid the answer would be the one he least wanted. But in the end, Isabella spoke first. On the street full of passers-by, she suddenly took his hand. He froze, quickly stopped walking, lowered his head, afraid to look up at her. "Do you still have money?" That was the first thing she asked. He was stunned, then quickly gritted his teeth. "Yes, I do." But remembering his current financial state, he still asked, "Can it be a little cheaper now?" Isabella suddenly laughed, a very soft laugh, no sound, just the corners of her eyes curving, a ripple of amusement in her gaze. She said, "Sure, 1 yuan a day. Can you afford that?" He was stunned for a long time, then hurriedly nodded, "Yes." "Then can you get a lifetime VIP card?" Hearing the word lifetime from him, Isabella paused. Something flickered in her eyes that he couldn't read. She still smiled, then gently took his hand. "Sure." The wind rose on the street, carrying a hint of chill. She stroked his hand softly. "Let's go home." With that, she pulled his hand and slipped both their hands into his coat pocket. He followed her steps in a daze. Truth be told, he had never imagined there would come a day when she would say those 3 words to him. "Let's go home." Inside the pocket, he gently squeezed her hand back. "Okay, let's go home. Together." That night, he and Isabella both drank. The room reeked of alcohol. Empty bottles littered the floor. She rubbed her temples and softly said, "My head hurts a little. Let's go to bed. I'll clean tomorrow morning." Of course he wouldn't refuse anything she wanted. They lay side by side in bed. He wore a shirt and long pants. She wore a cotton camisole nightdress. After lying there a while, he felt the distance was too much. So he pulled her into his arms. He had intended to take things further, but instead she told him her secret, about her past, and about the middle-aged man named Henry. This was the first time he saw Isabella smoke. She sat up halfway, took a cigarette and lighter from the nightstand, lit one. "Ethan, actually, all those rumors were lies." He looked up, and it was as if he saw a completely different Isabella. All the years he had known her, she had always been proud, cold and aloof, not one for many words. This was the first time he saw her smoke. Swear, but an Isabella like this felt strangely real to him. All those days of sleeping side by side, only today did he feel the person beside him had flesh and blood, was truly alive. She took a drag, turned to look at him. Smoke swirled between them, blurring her face. "Henry was never some older lover more than 10 years my senior. He was like a second father to me." Her voice trembled as she said this. Then she told him a long, heavy story. Back in middle school, because of an accident, her parents died, and she became an orphan. The inheritance her parents left was swallowed up by relatives, and she ended up homeless on the streets. That was when Henry picked her up and took her home. Truth be told, she and Henry had never known each other, But Henry had known her mother from long ago. He had done some not-so-clean work, lived alone his whole life. No children. No family. After taking Isabella home, he changed jobs, stopped earning dirty money. Because he said he had found a daughter, he couldn't let her live unable to hold her head high. All the money he had saved over the years, Henry never dared spend it, because he wanted to save it to send Isabella to school. At this point, her cigarette had burned down. Isabella turned to look at him, her eyes red. Don't you wonder too, why he picked me up, why he gave so much for me? He honestly nodded, especially with all those rumors. He couldn't help overthinking. Isabella smiled faintly, lips pressed together. Actually, he was a pretty foolish man. He loved one woman for many years. Quietly, loyally, never bothering her, never asking for anything, just loving her silently like that. He suddenly understood. Isabella smiled softly. He told me, when he was young, to give my mother a better future. He risked his life doing shady business at sea, suffering greatly. But, when he finally took the money he had saved to find my mother, he discovered she was already married. My father and mother had a flash marriage. My father fell for my mother's beauty. My mother fell for my father's money and status. He listened, completely stunned. Was he ever with my mother? Isabella stubbed out the cigarette, shook her head. From beginning to end, it was unrequited. That's why I say he was foolish. Isabella hesitated a moment, then lit a second cigarette. Through the curling smoke, she narrowed her eyes as if recalling old times. When he took me home, he told me, the reason he decided to take me in wasn't entirely because of my mother. He said he had once been in a relationship. The woman got pregnant with his child, but because he was poor, she aborted it. It was a girl. Isabella frowned slightly. He said when he saw me on the street, he thought, if that child of his had been born safely, she probably wouldn't be much younger than me. If his own daughter ended up homeless, he would die of heartache. But Isabella looked up at him. Her red eyes broke his heart. Ethan, tell me, do you think he was waiting all along for me to call him Dad just once? The last time I held Haim, I softly called Haim that, but I don't know if he heard me. Isabella pressed her lips together. This man was foolish his whole life. Never heard a single gentle word from my mother. Never heard me call him Dad either. She stubbed out the half-smoked cigarette, turned away. So foolish. To be honest, he was at a loss for words, throat tight, unsure what to say. It was short when told, but everything Isabella had just described was the entire story of her youth. It hurt his heart, and left him ashamed of his earlier filthy suspicions. He didn't know how to comfort her. He could only turn and pull her into his arms, softly whispering, he heard you. He definitely heard you. Isabella nodded slightly, said nothing. That night they talked for hours. About the past, about the things buried deep inside, only about the future. Isabella never uttered a single word. Perhaps it was the alcohol, or perhaps bearing one's wounds to another always brings a strange sense of release and abandon. He wasn't sure who moved first. They slowly drew closer and kissed. Tonight they both seemed different from usual. Her hands lightly pressed against his chest, fingertips tightening, then loosening. The Isabella of this night felt somehow different from every other. He closed his eyes, deepened the kiss. He thought she would understand what he wanted, but even when clothes were half shed, she still refused him. She took a deep breath, withdrew her hands and said in a low voice, Ethan, no. Why? He opened his eyes and looked at her, this time truly disappointed. That first night you brought me home, didn't we already sleep together? Just now neither of us meant to hold back. Everything happened naturally, so why not? But Isabella said nothing. She fell silent. Isabella, what exactly are you running from? I don't believe you felt nothing for me just now. She clearly had. Moments ago, they had been so close. He had seen the tenderness flickering in her eyes. She wrapped her arms around his waist, buried herself in his embrace, and sighed softly, I'm sorry. Ethan, I can't right now. Again, I can't. She knew she had him wrapped around her finger. That was why she could refuse so freely. He was quiet for a very long time. Finally he just sighed like her. Fine then. I'm not some wild beast. I don't have to devour you completely to be satisfied. That night, they simply held each other and slept. Strange, he was holding her so close. Her heartbeat was right by his ear. Yet inexplicably, he felt she was drifting further and further away. Just before Isabella fell asleep, he murmured drowsily, Are you hiding something from me? He kept feeling she was keeping something from him, not just about Henry. Isabella didn't answer for a long time. Right as he was slipping into sleep, her soft voice reached his ear, so faint it felt like a dream. Ethan, if I said yes, you wouldn't blame me, right? He wanted to say no, so please don't hide anything from me. But sleep overtook him. He couldn't open his eyes. He fell asleep without saying a word. The next day when he woke, Isabella was curled in his arms. It was already past 9. Isabella rarely slept in. Last night they forgot to draw the curtains. Sunlight now poured through the window, falling across her brows and the corners of her eyes. He stared, entranced. After knowing her all these years, on an ordinary morning like this, he could still marvel at how perfect she was. Before meeting Isabella, he had never imagined a girl this beautiful could exist in the world. She was cool and proud. No matter the gossip swirling outside, she always wore white dresses, her back forever straight. Standing in a crowd, she carried an ethereal air, untouched by mortal dust. He always thought she was exactly like the little dragon girl from Jin Yong's novels, pure and stunningly beautiful. He snapped out of it, only to find Isabella already awake. She was looking at him, a smile spreading in her eyes. The moment their gazes locked, Isabella leaned in and gently kissed his lips. Maybe because she had just woken up, his brain short-circuited. He asked blankly, Isabella, does this count as part of the job? Isabella paused, was silent for a second, then she smiled, sat up. You can think of it that way. Again that ambiguous, non-committal answer. But after living together all this time, he had grown used to this side of Isabella, and gradually stopped overthinking. He was someone who took things easy. Why think so much? Right now she was by his side. Compared to the 5 years of unrequited love before, at least now he could kiss her, hold her. That was already more than he had ever dared dream of. They brushed their teeth together in the bathroom. He suddenly noticed in the mirror, Isabella's face was frighteningly pale. Isabella. He held his toothbrush, leaned closer to look at her. Why is your complexion so bad? Isabella paused. It's nothing, probably just the lighting. He nodded, continued brushing, but he did notice. Lately Isabella seemed to have lost weight again. Isabella, he spoke with the toothbrush in his mouth, used his hand to measure her arm. You've gotten thinner again. You need to eat properly. He spat out the toothpaste, secretly pinched her cheek. You're too thin. You don't look healthy at all. Put on a little weight, it'll look better. Isabella smiled. Okay. Breakfast was still the toasted bread and fried eggs she made, along with 2 cups of warm milk. Afraid he'd find it boring, Isabella also fried 2 black pepper sausages. But after eating, when Isabella, as usual, went to wash the dishes, she suddenly covered her mouth and ran to the bathroom. She didn't have time to close the door. He hurried after her. It was the sound of her vomiting. He felt his heart break. He rushed over to rub her back, but before he could steady himself, Isabella pushed him away with her hand. She recovered after a moment, said in a low voice, wait outside. It's fine. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind you. But before he finished, she cut him off. Go out. Helpless. He stepped out of the bathroom, poured her a glass of warm water, stood at the door waiting. After a while, the toilet flushed. Then the faucet ran. She was washing her face again. When she came out, Isabella had finished washing. Water droplets still clung to her face, her complexion still pale. He handed her the water, worriedly asked, have you been feeling unwell lately? Let's not go to the shop today. Let's go to the hospital for a checkup. No need. Isabella took the water and drank a sip, turned to him with a smile. Don't worry. What could possibly be wrong with me? Just a little stomach bug lately. I'll buy some medicine later and be fine. Really? Why would I lie to you? Her expression was calm as she drank. Then she went back to the kitchen to finish the dishes. Seeing she really seemed okay, he relaxed. He was a picky eater, always snacking on random things, so nausea and diarrhea were common for him. He didn't think much of it. After she finished the dishes, they went to the coffee shop together, thanks to Isabella. The shop that was already trending had become even more popular. Some customers came just to film her secretly. In this looks-obsessed society, Isabella's flawless beauty quickly went viral. Countless guys flocked to the shop for her. He felt both protective and secretly proud. That little possessive streak in him couldn't be suppressed. Look, the girl he loved was this extraordinary, making countless guys fall for her. Of course, including him. He thought he would always be the one who loved Isabella the most among all her admirers. Everyone else loved her surface beauty, but he was different. He had known her for nearly 8 years, chased her for 5. He loved the person Isabella was, heart and soul. These days, Isabella grew gentler toward him with each passing day. A gentle Isabella was truly lethal. He sank deeper and deeper. He couldn't help asking her, "Isabella, have you ever felt anything for me? Isabella, can we stop talking about money? Can we date for real? Isabella, you like me a little, don't you?" But she never gave a direct answer. Every time, she would just smile softly, then cup his face and mess with it, and in the end say nothing at all. She understood him too well. He could never bring himself to push her. So even though she clearly dodged these questions, he still couldn't bear to press her. Every time he just let it go. But Isabella clearly made him feel that she had liked him too. For example, in this autumn full of falling leaves, she would burrow into his coat against the wind, hold his hand and stroll down the street. For example, when he casually mentioned wanting to try a new restaurant, Isabella would find an excuse, queue for an hour, and bring back every new dish for him. Another example, he once discovered her phone wallpaper was a photo of the two of them, the one where they were kissing. One time he got excited, used the timer to capture them kissing. That photo was his absolute favorite. It was taken at sunset, golden light bathed them both, beautiful beyond words. And whenever they kissed, she was always so serious, reverent, even. But just when he thought Isabella was slowly falling for him too, fate played another cruel joke. One late autumn, early winter morning, when he woke up, he found Isabella collapsed on the floor. His heart clenched in that instant. Panic and worry crashed together. He could barely breathe. His mind went blank. He didn't even know how he managed to call the ambulance. All he knew was that he carried her in a daze all the way to the hospital. After a series of tests, he received the devastating news she had late-stage stomach cancer. His world collapsed with a thunderous roar. He couldn't believe it. This proud, ethereal girl like a white swan. This girl who seemed to hold every good thing in the world. Why had a doctor just handed her a death sentence? But Isabella had known her condition all along. So when she woke in the hospital bed, she was only dazed for a few seconds before smiling at him. That smile was still so gentle. "Did I scare you? Did I scare you?" Those words, each one stung his eyes. So she had really known all this time. So all those times her face was pale. The blood when brushing teeth, the vomiting, it wasn't just minor illness. So, that was why she never spoke of the future. Why she never gave him an answer. So, that night at the KTV when he offered to keep her with money, the tenderness and ambiguity in her eyes. She had known everything from the start. He didn't know if she had ever loved him. If she had, he couldn't bear to imagine how she had felt all this time. He looked at her silently. On the hospital bed her face was ashen, her skin so pale it was almost translucent. After staring for a while, Isabella suddenly laughed. "I actually planned to hide it from you forever. Wait until I couldn't hold on anymore, then quietly leave. Who knew my body would be so useless? And I'd just collapse like that." If she hadn't said it, it would have been better. The moment she spoke, his heart ached even more. "Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you get treatment?" He gripped her hand tightly. Each word made his voice tremble more. Isabella still looked at him the same way, her voice very soft. "It's useless, Ethan. Treatment would just waste money. Besides," she smiled, "I don't have money, and I never planned to get treated." Yes, from beginning to end, she had never intended to fight the illness. She lay there looking at him, her eyes gradually reddening. "This whole time, the thing I regret most is agreeing to you that day at the KTV." He froze. "Why?" She gently squeezed his hand. Her palm was ice cold. "Because I spent your money, and still couldn't stay with you long. I understand how you feel, but I really had no way to return it." She sighed, her voice low. "Pretty awful, right? Spending your money, and leaving you with nothing. Ethan, if we could do it all over, that day at the KTV, I absolutely wouldn't have nodded." She seemed unable to hold it in anymore. Tears welled in her eyes, but she turned her head so he wouldn't see her cry. That moment was indescribable. The pain in his chest was soul-tearing. He had never seen Isabella cry, not even at Henry's funeral. But now, from his angle he could see her turned away, tears falling in large drops. Each one struck his heart like a hammer, clear and resounding. He stared blankly at her profile, suddenly feeling she no longer belonged to this world. The thought alone made his heart ache unbearably. On the third day in the hospital, Isabella asked to be discharged and go home with him. Truth was, Isabella didn't know. He had already started preparing to sell the apartment and the shop to treat her. He couldn't change her mind. So he secretly went to her attending doctor. Doctor, please tell me the truth. With Isabella's current condition, what are the chances of recovery? He had made up his mind. Even if there was only a % chance, he would save her. But in the office, just the two of them, the doctor looked at him twice, finally shook his head, and sighed. I've heard some of Isabella's story. She's a pitiful child. To be honest with you, it's too late now. The cancer cells have metastasized throughout her body. No treatment will help. It would only prolong suffering. Better to take her home. Let her spend her final days happily. He stood frozen for a long time. The meaning was, Isabella had no chance left. Finally, his eyes red, he left the office, then returned to the ward to pack her things, and took her home. On the hospital bed, Isabella quietly looked at him, then took his hand. Let's go home. He forced down the bitterness. Okay, let's go home. They took a taxi home. When they got out, he carried the bags with one hand, held Isabella with the other. Truth be told, these past days, more than once he had wanted to ask her whether during this time she had ever felt anything for him. In the end, he always let it go. Never mind whether she loved him or not, whether she had feelings or not, what difference did it make? It would all end in separation anyway. If she had loved him, it would probably only hurt him more. Back home, Isabella set down her bag, turned to look at him. The moment their eyes met, his heart still ached terribly. His eyes reddened uncontrollably. Isabella looked at him for 2 seconds, finally sighed softly, then leaned in and kissed his lips. It was an exquisitely gentle kiss. His mind went blank. He could only softly pull her into his arms, slowly deepening the kiss. But in the end, nothing more happened. Isabella said, "Let's drink again." He instinctively refused. "No, the doctor said you." She looked at him quietly. "It's fine, these last days. I want to let go a little. I've been restrained my whole life. I just want to be free at the end." That phrase, "my whole life," stabbed his heart. She was barely over 20. How was this already her whole life? Of course he couldn't refuse an Isabella like this. In the end he agreed, but made 3 rules with her. Only 2 cans of beer. She smiled softly and accepted. So they put on thick clothes and went out together, to buy groceries and alcohol at the supermarket. This seemed to be the first time he and Isabella went supermarket shopping together. They were like the most ordinary couple, hand in hand strolling the aisles, pushing the cart together, stopping at shelves to choose. This vegetable isn't fresh. That meat is too expensive. They filled the cart together. Meat, vegetables, snacks, and some cute little household items that felt warm. For example, an adorable bird-shaped toothpick holder. Press the button. The little bird would bow and pick up a toothpick. Another example, pale blue dried flowers and a pretty glass vase. Warm and beautiful. So much like Isabella. At checkout, Isabella paid first. Seeing him carrying the bags, she turned and smiled at him. "I've spent so much of your money, and never bought you anything. A few hundred yuan, I can still afford this." He forced a smile, followed her obediently. But he realized, Isabella had been pushing herself the whole time, from the taxi to the apartment door. A mere 5-minute walk. Isabella had to rest 4 times before her condition worsened. She could still pretend nothing was wrong, come with him to the shop, but now, her strength was failing fast. A 5-minute walk took them half an hour. In the kitchen they washed and cooked together. He could cook, but only passably. His food was edible at best, but Isabella was a master. So she was head chef, he was sous chef. They talked and laughed, the kitchen filled with laughter and the smoke of home cooking. While Isabella stir-fried vegetables, he washed more beside her, and stared at her back in a daze. These ordinary days with Isabella. "Could you give me just a little more time? I don't ask for 10 or 100 years. Even 1 more year. Even 1 more day would be enough." He realized he truly didn't dare think about her illness. The moment he did, the pain was unbearable. She was stir-frying, and behind her, he was silently crying his eyes out. After finishing 1 dish, Isabella turned off the stove. Before she turned around, he quickly spun away, turned the tap on loud, to cover his sobs. This meal was truly the hardest he had ever eaten in his life. He really couldn't smile. Looking at the girl in the white dress before him, only one thought filled his mind. Someone this good. Why was she sentenced to death? How could this be? But he didn't dare show his grief. He was afraid it would make Isabella feel worse. Actually, as the doctor said, every day now was borrowed time for Isabella. He had to let her live them smiling. But the emotions he was holding back still collapsed in an instant because of one sentence from her. While eating, she peeled lots of shrimp for him, then pushed the bowl of shrimp toward him, her voice gentle. "After I'm gone, remember to eat on time." He really couldn't hold it anymore. Tears fell in big drops. But he didn't dare look up. He just shoveled rice with his chopsticks, stuffing huge mouthfuls in, plain rice soaked with tears. Bitter beyond words. That was the most unforgettable day of his life. He and Isabella went to the supermarket together, bought food together, cooked together at home, ate together, drank together. He drank a lot. He remembered after getting drunk. He held Isabella and kissed her countless times. He asked her, "Isabella, has any other guy ever kissed you like I do?" Isabella smiled and kissed him back. "Only you." He remembered that sunset was beautiful. The stars that night were beautiful too. He drank too much. The rest became hazy. He only vaguely remembered as consciousness faded. Her voice seemed to reach his ear. "Ethan, I'm so sorry for never giving you an answer. I'm sorry. Actually, I felt the same as you. I'm sorry. We have to say goodbye now." She seemed to say more, but he couldn't remember. The alcohol was too strong. He fell completely asleep. But when he woke, it was already too late. Isabella was gone. When he woke, it was the next morning. He walked barefoot through every room, but couldn't find her anywhere. Only on the dining table was a letter she had left. The moment he saw the letter, his heart sank. A terrible feeling rose. Sure enough, his hands shaking, he opened it and scanned. At the bottom right he saw Isabella's final words. His hands trembled. The letter fell onto the table, blindingly white. He had once thought Isabella would be tormented by illness, and he would have to accept that one day in the future the disease would take her. But he never imagined it would be this soon. That she would choose to leave the world herself. He hadn't even finished reading the letter carefully when he received a phone call from the police. They said Isabella's body had been found in a corner of the nearby park. She had taken a large dose of sleeping pills, and in her phone, there was only his number. He hung up, dazed. He carefully put the letter away, then walked barefoot out the door. He even forgot to put on shoes. But the moment he closed the door, he stood barefoot in the empty hallway, and suddenly broke down, wailing uncontrollably. What hurt him the most wasn't actually the news of Isabella's death. He thought he understood her. Rather than being tortured to death by illness, she would rather choose a clear, cloudless day, and quietly, Judom bid the world farewell. But what crushed him was that even for her suicide, she chose a place where no one would find her. She had no home. The house she once shared with Henry had been sold to pay for Henry's treatment. In her final moments in this world, she had nowhere to go. He cried for loving such a fool. She was so impossibly good, right up to the last second of her life. She still kept her kindness and her pride. She didn't check into a hotel or motel to end it, nor did she leave from his home. She had nowhere to go. So in the early hours, she went to an empty park, found a forgotten corner, took the sleeping pills, and quietly slipped away. He couldn't accept it. He truly couldn't accept it. He crouched in the hallway crying for ages. Even the neighbor across the hall opened their door to look. He had probably disturbed them. He felt terribly sorry. But he really couldn't control himself. He didn't know how long he cried, until he thought he heard Isabella's voice. She said, "Ethan, you look ugly when you cry." He jerked his head up, hoping beyond hope it was all a joke. But the hallway was empty. Where was Isabella? Yet he clearly felt she was there, as if she were standing somewhere watching him, her gaze gentle. He took a deep breath, used the wall to stand. He knew he had to handle her affairs. In this world, she only had him left. He went to the police station and saw Isabella. She lay there, wearing her white dress, her face so peaceful, not a trace of the torment of illness. Even the corners of her mouth curved slightly. But she was so cruel. How could she abandon him alone at home? Let him drown in the beautiful dream of having her last night, then silently, without a sound, leave this world. He hadn't even gotten to say a proper goodbye. The girl he had loved for so many years, our final parting, was her one-sided farewell. She was the gentlest, most beautiful existence in this world, and also the cruelest. That night he locked himself in the room, trembling. He opened the letter again. The letter was long, 3 full pages, in Isabella's familiar handwriting. But every word tore his heart. "Ethan, I'm sorry I have to say goodbye this way. There's so much I want to say, but I don't know where to start. I'm sorry. Deep down I'm actually very weak. I couldn't bear the weight of your beautiful feelings. Because I was weak. Because I felt unworthy. Because I was afraid of dragging you down. Because of so many reasons. When we were in school, I didn't dare respond to your feelings. But to me, you were always special. The most special person of everyone I've ever met. Ethan, it was never unrequited. I liked you more than anyone, but I didn't dare say it. You were the golden boy, everyone's favorite. While I was just an orphan, I was ostracized at school. Whenever my name came up, it was always those ugly rumors. Even my tuition was earned through the sweat of a man who shared no blood with me. Countless times I wanted to come to you, tell you that I liked you too, but every time I looked into your eyes, the words stuck in my throat. Maybe you never knew. You have the clearest eyes I've ever seen. I think it's because you were so well protected growing up, that your eyes stayed that pure. I once thought, if I got into university, everything would get better. But the rumors kept coming. And then Henry was diagnosed with a terminal illness. So in my second year I dropped out, started working everywhere to pay for his treatment. He had raised me for years. It was my turn to repay him, so I cut off all contact with you. I didn't want to drag you down, but I never stopped watching you. I made a secret account to follow your Weibo, quietly watching your life. I knew you won first place in that competition, knew you started your internship, knew you graduated, and later opened your coffee shop. I was happy for you, truly happy. The boy I liked was doing so well, but during that time I was diagnosed with stomach cancer, because I delayed too long. By the time it was found, it was already mid to late stage. The doctor said the cancer spread fast. I started believing in fate. I realized no matter how hard I tried to live, fate had never been kind to me. Heaven never gave me a sliver of hope. But I thought if I could save Henry, at least one wish would be fulfilled. I wanted to go back to working multiple jobs, desperately earn money. But my body wouldn't let me anymore. My health was failing. To save him I took the job at the KTV, as you saw. But Ethan, I really started believing in fate. Because my very first day on the job, I ran into you. In my most desperate moment, besides fate, I had no way to explain that coincidence. That day is also the day I regret most. Before entering the room that night I had drunk. I was a little impulsive. I knew I didn't have long left, but I couldn't help getting close to you, kissing you, even agreeing to go home with you in the end. Using your money is the thing I'm most ashamed of. But Ethan, the moment I saw you, I wavered. I thought maybe heaven took pity on me. In my final days, letting me get close to the dream I'd always had. Every day after that felt stolen to me. Every minute, every second, every kiss, I cherished with all my heart. You don't know that every day with you, I lived as if it were my last. But Henry's death truly broke me. I've experienced too many farewells in this life. I know this pain. I started thinking, what if one day I left you? Would you be sad? Would you cry in secret? Would you stop eating properly afterward? Would you ever meet someone gentle again? I was worried, but I knew leaving was only a matter of time, especially later. My body couldn't hold on anymore. So many times I could only force myself to keep going. Remember when I threw up in the bathroom? I pushed you out. My attitude was harsh that time. Sorry, but I was afraid you'd see the blood I vomited into the toilet. I was scared, Ethan. Forgive my selfishness. I didn't want you to see. An Isabella ravaged by illness until she was unrecognizable. I wanted the Isabella in your memory, to forever be the girl who loved white dresses, who had long black hair, who smiled gently at you. Forgive my weakness. I could only leave while you were deep asleep. I couldn't face saying goodbye to you. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to let go. When you read this letter, I'll already be gone. Don't cry yet. Trust me. I left happily. Really, because I left on the happiest day of my life. I strolled the supermarket with the boy I secretly loved for years. We cooked together, ate together, drank together. We even kissed. I was so happy, truly. I went far away to end everything, so I wouldn't cause trouble for you or anyone. Ethan, you know, I have no family, no friends. In this whole world, the only person I worry about is you. So please don't let me leave uneasy, okay? I won't say hypocritical words telling you to forget me, but I hope when you remember me, it's always the happy memories we shared. I hope my brief time in this world left you joy, not pain. And I hope My leaving doesn't take away your ability to love. You're still young. You will definitely meet someone better. If you do, please don't reject them because of me. If that day comes, I want you to keep me in your memories and love them well. More than forgetting me. I'm more afraid you'll ruin yourself remembering me. Isabella's suicide letter was very long. He read every word. Strangely, reading these heartfelt words from when she was still alive, he didn't shed a single tear. He smiled as he read to the end, just like when Isabella left. Isabella probably never knew. Her leaving wouldn't take away his ability to love. On the contrary, because of her, he would know how to love everyone in this world. Having once loved someone so gentle and beautiful, every long year ahead would be healed by her. He smiled and put the letter away, glanced out the window. Outside, the moon hung high and bright, just like Isabella's eyes. Isabella, I'll remember you, and I'll love others well in the days to come. But even though he was smiling, he still couldn't hold back the tears. It must be because he carelessly opened the window, and the wind blew sand into his eyes. Epilogue. 3 years after Isabella left, he met a girl. She looked a lot like the Isabella of those years. She loved white dresses, long black hair, clear eyes, gentle personality, basically a copy of Isabella. He fell headlong, but she was completely different from Isabella. Isabella's gentleness was real, hers was all an act. From the start he knew, her sweetness was fake. She was, in truth, a toxic girl, but he didn't reject her advances. He held her hand, hugged her, but refused to kiss her. He spent money on her yet turned a blind eye to all her flirting outside. Gulp after gulp, he finished a bottle of beer, slammed the empty bottle onto the coffee table, turned to look at her. That day, he wore the white shirt Isabella loved most, dressed carefully, asked that girl out. He could see the moment she saw him. Shock flashed in her eyes. That day he took her to the supermarket, bought groceries together, then drove home and cooked together, ate and drank. She didn't understand anything, but went along with him. That night, he drank 1 bottle of beer. Then after dinner, he took the initiative to hug her. Isabella, goodbye. He held her and whispered. She froze. Isabella? My name isn't Isabella. He ignored her, let go and stepped back, smiled through tears as he looked at her. This time it really is goodbye. The girl stared at him in confusion, cursed crazy person, then stormed off angrily. A moment later she sent a breakup text, and conveniently announced her new boyfriend on her social feed. He closed WeChat, stared at his phone wallpaper in a daze. 3 years. His wallpaper was still that old photo, him and Isabella kissing under the sunset. Time stood still. He looked at it for a long time, then changed the wallpaper. The new one was a cartoon, little kittens rolling happily on grass, full of life. It had taken him 3 years to walk out. He would never forget the girl who once appeared in his life, who stunned his entire youth. But he had learned to let go. He had to let go, just as Isabella wished. That night he had a dream. The first time since she left, he dreamed of Isabella. In the dream she was smiling, exactly as he remembered. White dress, long hair, gentle eyes. She walked over smiling, stood on tiptoe and pinched his cheeks. Her smile so soft. Ethan, this time, I can really leave with peace of mind. In the dream he smiled too. He looked at her quietly. Okay. She withdrew her hand and waved. Ethan, you look especially handsome when you smile. He smiled as he watched her walk farther and farther away, softly laughing. Yeah, I think so too.